Hey, everybody. Thanks again for checking out one of the interviews for our amazing summit. Today, we are talking to Tim Montague. He is from Clean Power Consulting Group, and we're going to be talking about integrating green options, in this case, solar, into your business model. How does it affect you? What are the different benefits that you can get? And also the more intricacies of it that we might not know. So, Tim, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Bill. I'm excited to talk about clean energy.
Cool. So, first and foremost, tell us about yourself, what you do, and a little bit about clean energy and clean power consulting group.
Sure. I am a serial entrepreneur and I'm an ecologist by training. I'm very interested in the natural environment, but discovered my passion working in business and helping business owners benefit and profit from energy efficiency and cleaning the grid or integrating solar and batteries into their business. I grew up in New Mexico. My dad was a techie DIY person. He was a professor at University of New Mexico, and we were doing what's called solar thermal, making hot water from solar when I was a child in the 1970s. And the modern technology that we use now mostly is photovoltaics, and that wasn't really on the scene because it was very expensive. But the price of solar PV, as we call it, has come down tremendously. It's come down 80% in the last 10 years. And so now it's a real viable opportunity. It's accessible, it's affordable, and it's a great way to save money. And so I spend all my time now working in some way or another, whether helping others become solar professionals or helping companies integrate solar into their businesses.
Okay, very cool. So, um, we talked a little bit about the solar being more accessible now. So, I want to kind of jump into that a little bit. So, you know, where is solar at now, and where did I think getting a clear picture of where it's at, because I think everyone has a vision of what solar is, but let's talk about what solar is like now, as far as efficiency, as far as a reliable source, like you said, but also as a practicality and things that you can achieve with it.
Yeah, solar is very geographic. And so I wouldn't assume that everyone knows what solar is. It happened really first in California on the West Coast and Hawaii. Hawaii has some of the most expensive electricity in the United States because you have to bring all the energy in the form of oil and coal to the island to make electricity. And so it's very expensive. And that makes photovoltaics profitable faster. We have an expression in solar called penciling. So when solar pencils, that's when it takes off. Uh, but now solar is gaining traction in, I would say a dozen markets in the US and soon all 50 states. I mean, you can find it everywhere. It's just not super common everywhere. If you go to Colorado, or if you go to California or Arizona or New Jersey or New York or Massachusetts or now Illinois, you will see solar panels on rooftops everywhere. And you'll see whole communities where all the homes have solar on them in places like Colorado and California. Not so much here in the Midwest. We're 10 years behind those markets, but now solar is taking off here. We have special incentives. And so it's a combination of things that makes solar accessible and take off as an industry per se, and it has to do with the economics largely. Solar used to be very expensive. It was $100 a watt when I was a kid. Now it's 30 cents a watt. So we call this cost the cost adoption curve. The cost comes down dramatically and people buy a lot more of it. And so we have to make more of it. And as we make a lot more of it, the price gets cheaper and cheaper, right? When you mass produce something. And so we're now mass producing solar panels, mostly in other places, but about 75% of solar panels come from outside the US. We do have solar panel manufacturing in Ohio, in Florida, in Georgia, in Washington State, and a few other places. So it is coming in, and the Biden administration is trying to change that and make much more manufacturing happen in the U.S. But if you're in a state that has what's called net metering, and this is one of the fundamentals, And what that says is if you make electricity with solar, these black panels that you see behind me, that's a behind the meter solar array at a community college in Champaign, Illinois, where I live in central Illinois. And that the electricity from that facility feeds into the college, which is just a little further above my head up here. And what it does is it reduces the power bill by, say, 50%. Sometimes you can offset 100% of the electricity load of the facility, but you still can't get rid of the power bill entirely because you're getting grid services at night when the sun isn't shining. And so you can reduce your bill by 50 to 75%, whether that's your home or your business. And if you have net metering. And so that's a fundamental. And we have net metering now in 30 plus states around the country. And then there are other incentives like the investment tax credit, which right now is 30%. So when you buy solar as a homeowner or a facility owner, business owner, you can write off 30% of the value of that project. Let's say it's a commercial project, might be $100,000. Then you could write off $33,000 right off the top. And what that does is it shortens the payback period. We now have a payback period of 3 to 6 years in Illinois because of the federal and state incentives that you have. And you have to look at your state and region, what incentives there are and what's allowed. So where it's happening, it's really great. And some markets have really sweet incentives and some don't. And then it's just a slower adoption curve, so to speak.
Okay, cool. So we went through a lot of stuff there, and I want to kind of break it down a little bit more. So definitely is a growing market, becoming more accessible, and some of the benefits that we obviously see is lower electric bills. Obviously, we have the tax incentives. Now, I like the idea of the net metering. That seems to be one way that we could, see that benefit. Now, are there other ways? Like, what are some other ways that we, if there are any, that the electric solar panels might be used? Um, I don't think many commercial buildings are going to go off grid, but examples of like what are some other options besides net metering as far as
Yeah.
consuming electricity? I guess if that makes sense. I don't know if I confused you.
There's what we call in clean energy, there's what we call a value stack of the technology. And this applies to solar and batteries and wind. So you have the energy that the array produces, right? It's supplanting the kWh that your facility uses. That's first and foremost. Then there's the tax incentives, the investment tax credit, and there's also state and federal depreciation, which is another tax incentive. We call this maker's depreciation, and there's a special form of this for solar equipment. So you have tax incentives, then you have cash incentives. And in Illinois, for example, we have something called renewable energy credits. So for every kilowatt hour of electricity that a solar facility makes, you get paid as a system owner for that electricity. And that is 30 to 50% of the project's value coming back to you in Illinois in 7 years. They pay out 15 years of RECs over 7 years. And so they front load this cash payment, and it jolts the consumer to go, oh, I'm going to be cash positive in 5 years. I'm going to do this. And what Illinois is trying to achieve is a 40% clean grid by 2035 or 2040. And so the state has a very explicit goal, and the only way to achieve that in a timely manner is to provide some incentives. And the way this is being paid for, it's not a tax, it's a fee that is collected by the utility. So we have something called investor-owned utilities. In Illinois, those are Ameren, ComEd, and Mid-American. There's certainly investor-owned utilities in most places, but there's also co-ops, rural co-ops, and munis. So you have to be careful. The munis and co-ops play by different rules. So, but anyway, in investor-owned utility territory, which tends to serve the bigger, denser cities across the country, in those regions, then you can take advantage of these incentives called renewable energy credits. And there's another one called the smart inverter rebate, which is incentivizing a certain kind of smart technology to be installed, which allows the utility to regulate the array if they, for some reason, need to throttle back the amount of electricity being produced. What's not apparent, Bill, is that
Mhm.
40% of all new electricity generating facilities installed in the US in 2022, okay, in Q1 were 40% were solar. So solar is becoming a major part of new power generation on the grid. It's not something that ordinary people pay a whole lot of attention to, right? Because some of these are big power plants, and then some of them are what we call distributed generation, small power plants, like the one you see behind me. That's a 10-acre solar farm, or rooftop solar on your roof. But so there's this stack: energy to grid, tax incentives, cash incentives, and then there's the environmental benefits, which are significant because when we're making electricity with sunlight, which is what PV is, then you're not having to burn fossil fuels, coal or gas, to make that electricity. And those things are doing two things. They're putting pollution in the air that's bad for human health. It literally causes emphysema in humans, right? It is shortening our lives. Okay. But it's also then decarbonizing the economy and helping us step back from the brink of climate chaos. Because what we've done in the last 200 years is pump a tremendous amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. 800 gigatons, to be exact, is now sitting up there in the sky. And it's causing runaway global warming. You can't see it because it's transparent. The sky looks just normal, right? But it's actually a huge garbage dump. And so while the economy is only 40 gigatons of carbon that we need to zero out to go green on an annual basis, there's a lot more that we have to do to suck that carbon out of the sky that we've been dumping there for the last 200 years. So it's a big problem, but solar, wind, and storage is the technology that we have today. It's totally viable. We just have to install a lot of it and have a sense of urgency for that. And we now have legislation like the IRA, that is the Inflation Reduction Act, which was just passed last month, which is creating a lot of incentives for this. So the US is getting serious about meeting international climate goals and helping the US economy modernize and transition away from dirty to clean power.
Absolutely, and I think that the biggest thing we need to take away from all of this, you know, is that we want to convert to green energy because we're obviously killing our planet, but it's also becoming economically possible. And I think that was a barrier that a lot of people had. Like you said, it was very expensive back in the day,
Yeah.
where now you're being almost paid to put it in. You're being in like tax benefits. There's just so many incentives on how, like, adding this as a way to make your business more economical for yourself. It's becoming more and more of a kind of like, why don't you? As opposed to, oh, it's a cost. How do I do it? Or is it going to be good for us? Because you have the cash value, you have the tax value, you have the green for PR and publicity, and getting your name out there and getting associated with that kind of stuff, and you get the benefit of making sure that the planet doesn't melt. So there's so many benefits that are coming in. It's kind of like, if you don't do it, you really are just not interested, and there really isn't a reason anymore. So what I kind of wanted to get into off of that is talking about some of these practicalities that come along with it. Because as business owners, we always want to think, like, what are we going to get out of this investment? We're always looking for that return on investment. So we talked about the incentives that you get as far as some cash back, taxes, obviously getting your lower electric bill. But let's talk a little bit more about some of those other non-tangible, for lack of a better word, returns that you can get, that if you market them correctly, you're really going to get that return even better. So, why don't we start with getting the everyone's trying to go green and all that kind of stuff. Let's talk a little bit about, like, the PR, for lack of a better cohesion.
Yeah.
Let's talk
I
about
think
some of those things.
the best case or the best example of this that most consumers will know this company, the company is Walmart. And if you Google Walmart and sustainability, you will find a landing page that explains why Walmart as a corporation, which is one of the largest corporations in the world, they employ tens of thousands of people. They have many thousands of stores and warehouses around the country, right? They are a household name. And it's very unusual to find an American who's not at some point in their life been inside a Walmart. You may not shop there regularly, but you've been to a Walmart, right? And um, Walmart is installing rooftop solar on a very large number of their stores. I was involved in a portfolio of Walmart projects here in Illinois, 13 stores we installed solar on. And so they're doing this, and they're also asking the companies that make products that they sell in their stores to be responsible and reduce their carbon footprint and make more sustainable products. And those companies take that seriously, right? Because Walmart can buy products from anywhere. They're very powerful. And if they don't like what you're doing as a manufacturer, they're going to say, sorry, we're going to buy this product elsewhere. So, it's hard sometimes to relate to the non-tangible benefits of the clean energy transition unless you live in a place like California, which has clearly been impacted with increased frequency of fires. I lived in California for 10 years. I went to college there as an undergraduate. I lived in San Diego. Then I lived there as a young professional. I got my family, my children. My second son was born there. Lovely state, but now has some real climate problems. They also had a major heat wave this summer. It was 118 degrees Fahrenheit in Calistoga, which is in wine country in Northern California, a lovely place. I visited there when I lived in the Bay Area. That's unbearably hot, right? You don't want to be anywhere that's 120 degrees outside. You want to be inside in air conditioning. And now they're having to throttle people's air conditioners because they're having such a heat wave that they don't have enough electricity to run all the air conditioners. So climate change is real, but it may not be real for you, like staring you in the face. Like here in Central Illinois, we had a lovely summer. The crops are doing well. It's kind of business as usual. And it's the other places that are being more impacted. It's not that Illinois isn't going to be impacted. It is. It's going to turn into Texas in 30 years. We're going to be growing cotton in Illinois, not corn, because the climate is changing. Armadillos are now migrating into Illinois. You never saw armadillos in Illinois before. They're a warm weather animal. They're now in southern Illinois because it's getting hotter. But caring for the environment is a lovely thing. I never lead with that, right? When I'm talking to commercial facility owners, I always lead with the financial savings, because money talks, and money saved is money earned. But there's many intangible and tangible benefits, and it just whatever works for you. The entire value stack is never going to work for every customer. So it's finding out what works for you. And that's what's cool about clean energy is there's something for everyone in it, because everyone likes to save money. Everyone doesn't care about the environment, and I'm okay with that. And you said something that I just want to shine a light on for a second, and that is it's not about saving the earth. The earth is going to be fine. It's about saving humanity's butt, because we have this amazing life that fossil fuels gave us, and I recognize that, and I'm grateful. Now we have different technology that actually is better because it can solve some of the problems that fossil fuels created. I have absolutely no qualms with the fact that we used fossil fuels. My own family benefited directly. My grandpa Murphy in Chicago ran the Black Diamond magazine, which was a coal industry publication. Illinois is the number 5 coal state in the U.S. We have massive coal reserves. There was a big coal industry, still is, in Illinois. And I stand on those shoulders. I'm just now making the transition to the next wave. And humans have gone through energy transitions over the millennia. We used to just use wood, and then we discovered coal, and then we discovered whale oil, and then we discovered fossil fuels. We didn't end the Stone Age because we ran out of stone, right? We ended the Stone Age because we discovered metallurgy, and that's what solar is. Solar is the metal for energy, so to speak.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because as a business owner with that return on investment, when we're marketing that we are going green, these are all things that we need to be cognizant of because our consumers are mindful of it, and they want to see and support companies just like Walmart would buy from particular dealers as well. Like the whole world is shifting in that direction, and as business owners, we want to stay with that curve or ahead of it. We don't want to fall behind. We don't want to be the last person that's still stuck with using fossil fuels or consuming electricity that was created by fossil fuels because we're going to be the only ones left, and we're going to fall out of being in business because there are going to be enough people who are just like, okay, well, them over there, they don't use that, and you do, and it's the same product, so I'm just going to go buy it from them. So because of the fact that our
Yeah.
markets are so saturated with opportunity, just like you were saying, Walmart could go to the next person, consumers can do the same thing. So we need to stay cognizant and ahead of where we're all heading, which, like you mentioned, is we're just heading to the next best thing. The electric cars can now go as far as a gas car. So, the next step is to put in enough infrastructure to make it make sense. And it's just the natural next progression. It's it's not
Yes.
causing the issues that the fossil fuels did. And then we'll probably have nuclear power or something come after that. And
Yeah.
it'll fix like what the electric cars have, which is they can't go too far, maybe, or the charging is
I'm glad you mentioned transportation because this is another lovely example of these transitions. And if you Google this expression, you'll see some amazing photos. In There's a great photo of New York City in 1901 where all the transportation happening on this in this photo was horse and buggy.
Mhm.
And then fast forward to 1913, same shot, same street in New York City. It's Well, in the first photo, there was one internal combustion engine. It was all horse and buggy, one ICE engine. Go to 12 years fast forward, 1913, it's reversed. And they're all ICE engines, and there's one horse and buggy. We had nothing against horses. Humans loved horses, right? But it was just cleaner, faster, cheaper to get around with internal combustion engines. And the horse and buggy disappeared completely. When's the last time you saw a horse and buggy? I do have a community an hour south of me here that uses horse and buggy, and that's an Amish community. So they are some of the few left. But the number of horses in the United States plummeted, not because we had anything against horses, it's because we developed a new technology that was faster, cheaper, and more convenient. And that's what electric vehicles are going to be. You don't see it yet because EV sales are only around 2% in the US. But if you go to Europe, they're upwards of 50%. In Norway, they're 80% of new car sales are EVs. And Europe is 10 years ahead of us. So I was saying this morning on my podcast, look to Europe if you want to see the future around energy and transportation because they are 10 years ahead of us. And the same is true of China. We like to ding China for a lot of things, but they are making the energy transition very quickly and they're very serious. They have whole cities that are dedicated to manufacturing batteries, for example, whole cities. And we have to wake up and dial into this economic opportunity because it is a huge economic opportunity. If we don't build the battery factories, China will continue to do that and eat our lunch.
Exactly. And I think that you touched on another really cool thing that we can talk about where, um, part of what makes people rich and billionaires and stuff is they move and get ahead of these kind of changes and also get into those industries that are going to be instrumental. They're not necessarily a raw form like oil or coal might be, but creating batteries when all the cars are going to be electric in the future, or creating the solar fields, or getting into this area of we need to do this conversion. How are we going to do it? Like that's the beginning of where that wealth for a lot of people comes in. That's why the people who control the oils and stuff aren't necessarily excited about this, but that's how they did it. When it was big for the combustion, they got into oil, and that was the beginning of that whole process. So, you know, as business owners, we need to get into the next thing, and it's going to be this. So, it is a huge opportunity to get into those areas and be
Yes.
at the base of it, and be those people who are going to be the next billionaires, cajillionaires, whatever, because you have like a foothold in the base of this as it expands.
Yeah.
Um,
And the oil companies are getting into clean energy. And
Yeah.
if you just Google that problem, Shell Oil, for example, a big Dutch multinational, big oil major, they bought Sonnen, which was a German battery manufacturer. The Koch brothers, famous for their investment in the fossil fuel industries and their political activism around fossil fuels, they now own a major solar installation company in California that installs utility scale solar facilities. Why? Because it's an economic opportunity. This is what Jigar Shah. Jigar is the head of the DOE Loan Program Officer. It's a department within the Department of Energy that makes loans to next generation technology. They gave Tesla a loan, which Tesla paid back. And Tesla is now creating thousands and thousands of jobs in Texas and California, where they have factories, and Nevada, right? Um, but so this is a huge wealth transfer opportunity, and you can benefit from it no matter what your line of business is. Okay, whether you make widgets or you're a law firm, you can benefit directly by putting solar on your facility or participating in community solar. If you can't put solar on your facility, in states like Illinois and New York and Massachusetts and now California, you can participate in community solar. You buy energy from a community solar project, which is similar to this project here. It's just out in a farm field somewhere. And then you get some of your kWh from that project at a discount over what you're paying for grid power. And then you're participating directly in the grid, in the cleaning of the grid. Or if you want to get into the real meat of it, which is like me, okay, I make my career out of clean energy and clean energy education and clean energy project development. Many angles.
Yeah. Awesome. So I definitely think we covered a really big number of how green energy really is where we need to be heading, but also how to apply it to our business. And I think you summed it up really nicely there at the end. How to benefit from it, how to use it, how to get that return on investment, and why we should be starting to get into it. So, before we get into some actionable steps for people to get into, what they should do next, is there anything else you think we should talk about real quick with, solar, green energy, or any of that kind of stuff?
No, I think we've given a good introduction to it. It is hard for lay people to kind of wrap their minds around, but just know that this is not new. The technology was invented in 1954 at Bell Labs in New Jersey. It's American technology. It's had 70 years to mature and develop, and now it is truly a very mature industry. You can get a 24% efficiency from a solar panel now. The ultimate uh, physical limit is 30%. So we're approaching the physical limit. Now there's next gen technologies that are coming and you'll see a constant evolution, but solar is viable in every state in the United States, including Alaska. Some people say, well, isn't it too far north here in the Great Lakes? No, you can put solar in Canada. Germany is one of the most solarized countries in the world, and they're like at the same latitude as Canada. So solar is viable in any market in the U.S. It's just a question of what is the payback period. It may be short, it may be longer in your community. It depends. And so you need to find a solar professional or a solar association. There's statewide associations in all 50 states now, which is also an indicator of how mature the industry is getting. But what else would you like to talk about? I love talking about the energy transition, so I'm all ears.
No, I think we've covered enough, like you said, as an intro, and I think that as they would like to know more, they can obviously contact people like you to really delve into specifics. Because I think at this point it would be specific to their industry or their business or what they're getting into. But for what I would like to do to kind of wrap up is talk about what are these first steps that people should get in do when they're looking to get into something green. And we kind of touched on one, which was to reach out to local industries that are either in solar or groups or things like that. But what are some other things that they can do to get themselves ready or kind of take the first steps to doing this?
Yeah, I mean the lowest hanging fruit is what we call negawatts. That's energy conservation, right? Upgrading your lighting to LED lighting. LED lighting is a good example of how technology just kind of takes the industry by storm. The incandescent light bulb, which is the light bulb that Thomas Edison invented and made mainstream, right, was a wonderful technology, obviously very useful, but it's not efficient because it produces a lot of heat. And so it's while it's making light with electricity, it's also making a lot of heat, and that's just not the main purpose of lighting. Whereas LED lighting is much more efficient, and it's 90% more efficient, so you consume a lot less electricity, and so you reduce your power bill by investing in LED lighting. And the utilities have programs to incentivize this transition, and again, you can get incentives to convert your lighting. Most businesses now, most residents have converted to LED lighting, but if you haven't, that would be a great thing to do and a very cost-effective thing to do. Also looking at your envelope, are there leaky windows or doors that you need to tighten up so you're not leaking air-conditioned air, whether that's heated air or cooled air, depending on the season, right, to the environment. Installing newer controls or smart controls on your HVAC system, like an intelligent thermostat, is a great upgrade to make also, which you can control with a smartphone. You can program it. There's all kinds of things that you can do with these modern electronics. So I would encourage people to check out energy efficiency first and foremost, but then dipping your toe into clean energy. It really is, whether you're a fan of wind or solar, rooftop solar for commercial industrial facilities, rooftop solar is probably the most economical way to reduce your power bill. And you need to find a professional to do this. This is you can find information about doing this yourself and figuring out how much solar you need on your facility if you're really into DIYing it. But I would just encourage you to reach out to an installer because they'll give you a free assessment, and it starts with your power bill. We look at how many kWh you consume on an annual basis, and you can very quickly determine, okay, if you consume 1,000,000 kWh per year, divide that by 1,200, and that will tell you how many kW of solar you need to offset your annual consumption. I'm just going to do that math real quick. 1,000,000 kWh divided by 1,200. In Illinois, that's a good number, 1,200. And that would be 833 kW. That would be a big commercial solar project. You may have a small facility. It's going to be a smaller solar facility, right? Bigger the bill, bigger the benefit. But all facilities of all sizes can benefit if you have a good roof for solar. You have to think about the roof condition because you don't want to solarize an old roof. The solar panels are going to be there for 25 or 30 years, and so your roof needs to be 10 years old or less. So if you've recently re-roofed or upgraded your roof, that's a great time to consider solar. If you have ground next to your facility, that's also an option. We do a lot of ground-mounted solar for larger facilities. For obvious reasons, it's easier to get to. It's easier to see if you're trying to show it off. Whereas rooftop solar, most commercial facilities are at least 20 feet tall, and so you can't see the solar panels that are sitting up there. But we do what's called ballasted solar on flat roofs. It's just weighed down with ballast blocks, which are like cinder blocks. And you do have to do a study. You have to do a mechanical load study to make sure that it'll hold the weight. The solar array weighs about 3 to 6 pounds per square foot. A snow load in the Midwest would be 20 pounds per square foot. That's what the facility is designed to hold. So facilities are designed to hold a load on their roof, mostly from wind and snow are the major considerations. And now solar is in the mix. And not every facility can do it per se, but if your roof's in good condition, the odds are very good that you could. And then dipping your toe into the economics and figuring out, okay, can I save $10,000 a year or can I save $100,000 a year? For a big commercial facility, you could save $250,000 a year, literally. And so you can take that money and invest it in hiring or doing R&D or augmenting your facility in other ways or expanding to other markets. And that's really what it's about, is conserving resources in one area and then leveraging those resources in other areas to help your business grow better and faster.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim. I think we really covered a lot of what people need to know and business owners need to consider when they're considering this and how to benefit from it, get that return on investment, and look at this as an actual business thing. So thank you so much. We look forward to meeting everybody in the networking event tonight. And thanks again, Tim. We'll see you all there.
All right. Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.